Have our big summer sale happening on Sizzix.com. It starts today, Wednesday the 13th, and goes all the way through Sunday on the 17th. There are so many good dyes and tools and accessories and machines even that are going to be on sale on our website. There's stuff from chapter 1 and chapter 2 and even chapter 4 from last year, as well as some other dyes that are even up to 80% off. That's a pretty big deal, I think. But there's also machines on there, so if you don't have a machine and you're looking to maybe look into one and you've been curious about it, now might be the time to take a look at those. But I am going to do a make today with some stuff from the sale. This chapter 1 dye called Stackable Geometrics is in that sale. And most of the time I think when people look at dyes like this, they think they're just like a one-off type thing. You can't use it for a lot of different types of makes. But I actually want to show you a couple of different techniques that you can do with this particular dye set. And one of the things that I think people forget is that you can actually emboss with intricate Thinlit dyes. So in order to do that, you're going to need an emboss and transfer set. So this is something we sell, and it basically takes your Thinlits dyes, the really intricate designs, and you can then use them as essentially embossing folders, which I think is so cool. But in the emboss and transfer set comes the silicone rubber and the impressions pad. And these are basically the two things that you need in order for the dye to not rip through the paper. But when you're working with intricate dyes, especially one like this, when they cut out, obviously gluing these is pretty difficult, I think, especially when you see how small these particular little ridges and edges are. So I actually always love to use the adhesive sheets when I am working with intricate dyes. It just makes gluing them down so much easier. So I'm actually going to show you first how you emboss. Then I'll show you a couple different ideas that you can actually make with just that particular dye set that's in the sale. But as you can see, there's two different designs right here. This is the bottom layer and this is the top layer. They match up perfectly on top of each other. I think I've got it turned around. Yeah, so you can see that they're a layerable kind of dye. But what I'm going to do first is show you how you use them for embossing. So I've got my machine here. And one thing I want to note is that when you're embossing, now all the machines are a little bit different in how the sandwiches function, so you're going to need to pay attention to the directions on each of your machines. But on this particular machine, I have to go down to this base layer on the platform in order to do my embossing. So this is what I'm doing right here is this one, which is the silicone rubber impressions pad. It's how you use your Thinlits dyes to emboss. So all you'll need is this right here, your platform, and then you're gonna need, I'm gonna flip this around real quick so you can see. And then on the next layer is a cutting pad. And then you're gonna actually put the dye down after that. And so I want to emboss this bottom panel. Now, when you're embossing with paper and Thinlits, I always recommend that you get the paper wet. This just loosens up the fibers, makes it so much easier for it to go through the machine, and it just really makes it more pliable. Believe me, it helps in the long run. So I'm gonna lay this out and just flip it over. And then the next layer down is the silicone rubber, and you want to put that on gently so it doesn't move around what's below. And then the top layer is the impression pad. And then I'm just going to put this in, and you only need to go through once. If you go through more than once, the likelihood of your paper starting to rip kind of goes up higher. But as you can see, one time through, and I get a perfectly embossed panel. And then I would just take a pair of scissors or a paper trimmer and just cut this down to the size I want it to be. So let me do this one more time. I'm going to show you what it looks like with this upper layer. Again, I'm going to wet. Really only need like 2 spritzes. I was being very generous on that last one. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put the dye facing up with the paper on top. My silicone rubber on top of that. And then the impressions pad. And then you're just going to run that through the machine one more time. I love how that looks. Isn't that fun? So one thing I like to then do with these to really show you how well these look is take a little bit of ink. So I've got some ink here and I'm just gonna go across the top so that you can really see how well that embossed. Isn't that nice? So if you kept going around, I've got a sample right here of one already pre-done, you would get this in the end. So you have a really beautiful embossed panel, and you can use this as a card front. I was even thinking this would be really pretty on the front of a recipe tin box so that you can put recipes inside. But then the next step up from this is you see that this one I just left it plain, but I also did this one, which is the other layer, and you can see there's a lot more white space with this one. So I thought it might be nice to then cut out this top decorative one as the Thinlit. So I used the bottom part of the platform to be able to cut it, or not cut it, but to emboss it. But then if I want to actually cut it, I would go to my top, or not my top, sorry, my thin die adapter. I would add in that. So I'm gonna do that real quick for you. So I put that back on, and then I'm gonna put my one cutting pad. And then I've prepped one of my pieces of paper with an adhesive sheet. So I'll pull that in real quick, and then I'm gonna lay my die in. Now this is an intricate die, so I'd actually recommend either getting out your precision base plate, or another trick that I've learned recently is if I flip it that direction and I put it at an angle and then run it through the machine, it cuts in one run, which I think is great. So then I've got my die brush over here with the foam, and I'm just gonna use that to clean out the die. Okay. And look at that. I've got a really nice decorative panel that I can then lay in on top of the embossed panel if I wanted to, like that. And then it's adhesive back, so I would just peel it off and lay it in. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways and looks for this particular card. Another thing you can do is cut out each panel by itself, and I've already pre-cut these with adhesive sheets on the back so that I can just lay them down so you can see how this looks. So I've prepped a card base, and I'm just going to lay this panel down, which is the lower panel. And then I've got the top layering one, and before I lay it down, I'm going to make sure it lines up right. So you've got a really fun geometric pattern if you just lay the pieces together like that. Another option is, like I said, is to take your embossed panel, which I've already embossed it, inked it, and pre-cut it down, and then you lay in the panel above just to give it a fun kind of trick of the eye embossed look, because you can see the difference between layering them when they're flat and they don't have the embossing effect, and layering them when they do have the embossing effect. So then I have just prepped a sentiment here. This is our Chapter 2 occasion phrases. And I'm just going to lay this on top. And then you've got a really fun card front ready to go. I've got a couple other samples here I want to show you. So this is another one I did where I embossed, I didn't ink, but I embossed that lower panel, which is this one, on the white, and then I took the top panel and cut it out of our Bluebell cardstock and layered it in. And then I just added some of the Chapter 1 spring stems, which is also in the sale, and again, our Chapter 2 occasion phrases. And then I just added a few gems on there. And then this is another one I did with our agave cardstock on the bottom and then the Arctic Sky cardstock. And then I used our metallic texture roll, the silver, to just do the different font. And then this one I really love. So as you can see, when you cut these out, you get all these fallout pieces. Well, if you're cutting them out with adhesive sheets on them, then you can layer them back in and create your really own fun geometric patterns. And then I actually love to take the sentiments and build them and stack them and create dimensional sentiments. So that's, I think, 3 or 4 of this sentiment stacked so that it becomes dimensional. One final thing I want to show you is that this works even with like individual dies. So these are obviously panels. So anytime you see a panel like this that's intricate, you know you can emboss with it. But you can also emboss with these really intricate dies as well. So this is the Scribbly Butterflies from Chapter 1 by Tim Holtz. And I took the die, and you can see this is the die from this set right here. And I just cut it out of plain white cardstock. But I wanted to see if I could get a similar embossing effect as I did with the other panels. So I actually did go ahead and pre-cut it, and then I fussy cut around the edge so that if I wanted to, I could layer them together. I don't think this one, I actually really like how this one looks just by itself with the embossing, but it's really fun, and you can do it with any intricate die. So we've got tons of dies in the sale. Some of them might be to your fancy with this kind of an embossing technique, but just check it out anyway. There's tons of great stuff for spring, and there's some stuff even from last year that's really fun that I might have to go check out myself. But we hope you enjoyed this little tutorial and idea for one of the dies that's in the summer sale. Go check it out. We'll see you soon.